Today I'm going to take you on a short journey of a very, very long career in dressmaking. I have photographs from 45 years ago and some garments that I've made more recently, even for myself. We'll look inside the ones that I have access to, and I'll give you a little bit of a history of many of them. I hope this will inspire your creativity, and I hope you enjoy this. Let's begin. Start with some of the more elaborate things that I've made. This dress was actually worn by the bride's mother, who is about 4 sizes smaller than the bride. So what we had to do was make it a backless dress because the bodice would not fit on this woman who was so much taller and longer from the shoulders to the waist. I had to add the sheer organza at the neckline. And also the sleeves. The sleeves were small and would not go completely up her arm, so we made a big puffy sleeve at the top and then extended the original sleeve down to the wrist and beyond. The rest of the dress, including the train, was original. This one probably was done around 2005, something like that. All of these dresses are out of silk with a Lansan lace. This one I did the entire party. The bridesmaids' dresses were out of polished cotton, and they were done in black and white. Each girl chose their own design so that they would have something they were happy to wear after the wedding. But all of the fabrics coordinated. They were solid black, solid white, and black and white polka dots. This one I only did the bride. I did not do the bridesmaids. This dress I made for a wedding, and it's Chinese silk. The jacket actually fits on top of the dress. The dress has a sweetheart neckline, and the silk organza is set into the sweetheart neckline, and the jacket sits on top of it. The jacket is all one piece. There's no seam for the sleeve. The closures are Chinese frogs, and there's a seam that goes down the middle of the sleeve, like a raglan sleeve would have. She wanted the same exact thing made in this fabric for her going away outfit. And I also made her a little headband with the veil. And this is a very, very special woman. She was a good friend and client for quite a few years. Her name was Phyllis Susen, and Phyllis was a harpist. She played the pedal harp. She worked for the Philadelphia Orchestra planning all the children's concerts. And then Carnegie Hall in New York City hired her, and she moved to New York City. Several times she would ask me to come up to New York, and I'd pack my sewing machine and supplies, and I'd actually get on a bus and take about a 3 to 4 hour trip up to New York and spend the weekend with her at her apartment. And I would probably get there on a Thursday or Friday, so I would have the day to myself while she was working. And I would be able to go out for lunch and fabric shop. I had a wonderful time doing this. This is a dress she had me make. It's navy blue. The top is satin. The bottom is wool. And it had a matching jacket. These pictures were taken in her apartment. This is an Lansan lace dress, black. I also made her gowns, and as her body changed, I would travel to New York to adjust the dresses. She was such a kind person, and she would always write me the sweetest letters to thank me for my work. A few months before she died, she was married in a tunic and pants that I made. She had bought a beautiful silk coat, and I made her the tunic that goes under it. The tunic and pants are made of 4-ply silk crepe, a fabric I absolutely adore working with and have used in countless garments over the years. She died of Lou Gehrig's disease. Before she died, Carnegie Hall had a concert, and it was given in her honor. And after the concert, there was a beautiful reception for her at the Russian Tea House next to Carnegie Hall. I was very grateful that she invited me, and I did go. This outfit is a corset and a skirt, and this was made before 2000. This is a painting. This young boy is the grandfather to these children. Their mother wanted me to recreate this outfit for her 2 boys to have a holiday card made. So these are wool sailor suits, and I tried to make them as close to the original as possible, and this is the final card. Around 1999, a young couple came to me in need of a dressmaker for ice skating apparel. And I was very honest with them. I had never made any ice skating apparel. I said I would love to work with them. And I ended up working with them for several years. This is the first outfit that I made. This is all silk chiffon, and this is stretch velvet. His shirt is silk crepe de chine. They went on to become third in the nation in ice dancing, and I sewed many costumes for them over the years. It was a lot of fun. I started an activewear company called sallysports.com, and I made practice wear for ice skaters. Although I never did get a picture of the child wearing this costume, I was hired to make a costume of a tree. And what I did was I got stretch fleece and I painted it to look somewhat like bark. I have a spider here. I went to the craft store and I bought autumn leaves. There's a bird and a nest. And although I never met the person that hired me, it was for Mariah Carey's nephew, who was about 5 years old at the time. They were not expecting it to take as many hours as I spent, so I can't tell you I made a lot of money on it. I did not, but I sure enjoyed the process. And this is a dress I made for myself to wear to a wedding about 25 years ago. It was a sheath dress that came right below the knee. It was a beautiful cream and gold lace, and I wore 3 strands of pearls, and I made a shawl to go with it that was trimmed with gold. If you look carefully, you'll see fine piping around the neckline and armholes. This is the back. I had pearl buttons and little loops. And this is the jacket. The dress no longer exists. This is a shantung, silk shantung. There are 2 darts in the elbow. I love the button. It has a very long bound buttonhole and a hook and eye, a thread eye at the top of the neckline. It's lined with Bimberg rayon lining. I absolutely love Bimberg lining. If you saw my tutorial on patterning the A-line dress, this is one of my A-line dresses. When I find a style that I'm happy with, I don't mind wearing it over and over in different colors, different prints, different fabrics. This is a very good piece of linen. And as you see, it's sleeveless. I faced the armholes with bias binding that I purchased. And this has a hidden placket. I absolutely love hidden plackets. This is also from the A-line dress pattern, except that I cut away the seam allowance at the neck and then made this outside facing. I sewed the facing right side of the facing to the wrong side of the dress, flipped it around and top stitched it. For the hidden placket, I used Petersham ribbon just because I had it and I thought it would be fun. Several years ago, I was invited to a graduation party and everyone was asked to wear white. This is the A-line shape of the dress, but it's before I even made that pattern. There are no darts at all. It's just slightly shaped. This is actually a coat, and I wore it over a white tunic and white linen pants. The sleeves are not quite to the wrist, and they're gathered into a small band. It has a yoke, and rather than face the yoke with the same fabric, I used organza that is a little darker than off-white. It has a pleat down the back, so it has fullness at the bottom. Just has a stitched hem. To interface it, I used Petersham ribbon. And the pockets are made out of organza. I did not want pockets to show. They're like a very light nude color, so you really don't see them. If I had used the cotton, you would have seen the pocket, and I did not want that. And it's got French seams. If you've seen many of my tutorials, you may have heard me say that my very favorite garment to wear is a shirtwaist dress. I absolutely love them, and these 2 are identical except for the prints. They are made of Liberty of London fabric, which is a wonderful lawn fabric, a lightweight cotton. They have, I think, somewhere between 300 and 400 beautiful prints. The company is over 100 years old. I plan on doing a tutorial just on this company at some point. Let me give you a little idea of what these dresses are. These are actually released pleats here at the waist. They're sewn from the waist up about 3 inches and then just released. So they're not darts that are sewn all the way to the point. I love sashes, but I tend to wear simple sashes now that I'm not 17 years old. This one, I used silk for the facing. And instead of buttons, which would chew up the fabric, I put snaps. At the waist, I put a real sturdy snap so it wouldn't come apart. And the under collar is also red. Needs to be ironed, but it will be ironed before I wear it again. It has a yoke, a pretty deep armholes, and it comes to a little below the knee. And this one is the same, except that I searched and searched. I wanted some fun fabric to put for the under collar and under the sash, and I found this. This is not Liberty of London, but I thought it worked really nicely. And actually, it has box pleats here to create a little bit of fullness. The skirt isn't terribly full. It's cut straight, but it's full at the bottom. And because of the pleats, of course, it fits and is shaped a little bit here at the waist. And they do have pockets. This one has a skirt hook at the waist and snaps. I covered the waist seam with hem tape. I used pinking shears to trim the darts at the waist and the back. You can see that this is a little box pleat dart that's been released. And these get hand washed, so I just used pinking shears. And I did turn and stitch on the seams. I like a good deep hem. It gives it a little body and a little weight. And the under collar also has that fabric. So I made one layer of the collar. So it's just the 2 layers for softness. And then I made the upper collar big enough that I could fold it back on the under collar and fold it under and miter the corners here by hand. There's slight gathering at the yoke. Most yokes come down about 1 inch. This would be the shoulder seam. Because I'm not very tall, I usually make my yokes about 3/4 of an inch. And for winter garments, my favorite fabric to work with is wool. I absolutely love wool. This is Harris tweed. I will do a story on Harris tweeds at some point as well. And I only had a yard and a half. I was intending to make a jacket for a model to make a tutorial. The pandemic came and I stopped working with models, so I made myself a coat. The coat is very short. It comes right above the knee. And this is navy velvet bias under collar. I did not want buttons. I didn't want to interrupt this plaid. This is the center, so I've matched everything perfectly. And when you match, what's so much fun is to actually match the sleeves. And sometimes, if you're really lucky and the plaid is the right width, it matches in the back. This doesn't usually happen. Usually, if you match the plaid in the front of the seam, it doesn't match in the back, but this one does. It's a slight A-line. It has 4 darts in the back, 2 on either side. I made a bust dart, and then what I did after the dart, then I matched it from the hem up. It also has pockets, and the pocket has a little facing that is also matched. And then I used cotton flannel, very, very dense. It's about 8 ounces per yard. I actually made some pajamas out of this, but it worked for the pocket lining so that it would be soft and not scratchy. Peter Pan collar, magnetic snaps, so I don't have to put buttonholes. And I had this white charmeuse, so I just used it. I did the little cross stitch to hold the pleat down. It's called an action pleat. The lining is sewn into the hem. And now what is probably my favorite garment of all time. This fabric is from the 80s. I had seen this style in an Agatha Christie film that I was watching. I wanted to make a tutorial on a plaid jacket. And when I saw the film, the story of it just evolved. To show you what I did to this. It has bound buttonholes, and the bound buttonholes are actually matched. I was very, very careful, and I matched this stripe all the way through the buttonholes. I tacked this part of the pocket down so it didn't stick out, but there are besom pockets, which is like a bound buttonhole, with the flap. Sewn on cuffs that turn up with the velvet, black cotton velvet. And once again, the under collar is cut on the bias and matched. The upper collar is the velvet. And the way this is done, The undercollar is cut large enough that it wraps over and turns under, and I have hand mitered and stitched the corners. This is a piece of lining I had. I love to put surprise linings in things. It has 1/8 inch French piping inserted between the facing and the lining. I didn't want to use a lot of this so I could use it with other things, so I lined the sleeves in black. This jacket was made from my sloper without any adjustments to the sloper. My sloper is big enough for me to live in it. Some people want a sloper very snug. I made my dress sloper, the bodice and skirt, a little tighter, but my torso sloper is big enough that if I use it for a blouse or a jacket that's not too loose, as long as I put big seam allowance so I can adjust it, I can use the sloper without any changes. This has 2 darts on either side, and of course they're matched. Oftentimes I have to actually sew these by hand before I run the sewing machine over them because the feed dog and the presser foot tend to want to shift the fabrics. And it's a 2-piece sleeve, which I will be teaching very soon. Plaids are tricky, but they're my favorite. It's just so much fun. Thank you for joining me today. I'll have more to share at a future date. See you next time.